It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning. Glad so many of you have joined us this morning. I'm out there watching on our, the total number of people that are catching the show live on our website, and it is, there's a ton of you out there this morning. I see Baltimore, Indianapolis, Sioux Falls. Let's see, I see a ton of you out there all over the West Coast and East Coast, down the middle of the country. It's a pleasure to see you all out there this morning. Thank you very much for joining with us. If you're a member with Patriot FB, I'm glad to hear and see you out there as well. Constitution Club members, welcome to the program. I got to tell you, folks, I have never, in my wildest dreams, thought that we would ever get to a point during my lifetime where we would see our own national government that would work so actively to portray American citizens as the threat or the enemy of the state. When I was a younger guy, I used to think and consider to myself that there were a lot of real dangerous issues out there that would potentially lead to some sort of an international a third world war or what have you, right? I mean, as a kid growing up in the 60s, we all remember climbing up underneath their desks, when we were told to duck and cover and all those kinds of things. I never really thought, though, that it would come from our own government. Not at this pace, not based on these issues. For Harry Reid to come out yesterday and call the Bundy supporters domestic terrorists, I got to tell you, folks, that is an act that is beyond comprehension. The man is a terrorist. Harry Reid is the domestic terrorist. He literally came out and said that the Bundy supporters are nothing more than domestic terrorists, adding, I repeat, what happened there was domestic terrorism. Well, I don't know about you folks, but I am tired of hearing that those who disagree, those of us who disagree with tyrants like Dirty Harry Reid, Obama, Boehner, McCain, and the entire traitorous bunch of real terrorists in Washington, D.C., that there's something wrong with us because we seek that which we have been guaranteed in writing by our founding documents, and which is a legacy and an inherent right that has been given to us by our Creator and by nature. The only terrorist that America needs to fear is this government in Washington, D.C., and people just like Harry Reid. They have twisted and they have corrupted this nation. They have bent it to their evil machinations. Harry Reid is a terrorist of the American people. And we're going to talk about it in clear, unafraid tones. You see, America, it is time for you to stand. It is time for you to speak out, even when your voice shakes with fear, because they're counting on that fear to silence you. The Ministry of Propaganda is hard at work supporting the self-same tyranny that this man espouses. Well, I've got to tell you, it isn't that simple. You know, there was an article out that has been put out by Reuters. And we're going to go through it because I think it's a great critical thinking exercise. I want you to watch as the establishment demonizes the Patriots who stood their ground to protect a family from domestic terrorism by their own government as state-sponsored domestic terrorism. You can hear and see and read in their own words the propaganda that they use to turn the hearts and minds of the American people against their own liberty and their own freedom to live their life unmolested by a tyrannical group of traitors based predominantly in Washington, D.C. This is a group of traitors, robber barons, and Frankenstein monsters of their own evil creation. You know, in science fiction movies, you see these robots that become sentient enough and creative enough to recreate their own kind. And that's essentially what this has become. We're going to go over this and we're going to engage our critical thinking gears. We're going to use this as a training exercise so that we can see how bias is presented and how propaganda is injected into the thinking of the sleeping slaves of tyranny. Our second segment this morning is going to be dishonorably discharged. All of Washington, D.C. must be dishonorably discharged, or we will necessarily die trying, folks. You've heard me use the phrase, if you've listened to this show before, that we are dead men walking, and I do not mean to exclude women. We are dead men walking because we know, and you should be fully cognizant of the fact, that we are at this stage in the game putting our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor front and center, foremost, in the vanguard, at the tip of the spear. That is who we must be. Because we have no further obligation, we have no other duty for the remainder of our natural human lives, but to hand off the torch of liberty to those who come after us. No, not the helpless, not the hapless, not the stupid, not the idiots, not those who seek to squander the resources of others, not the looters and the hangers-on, the ticks and the leeches. Natural selection will take care of them. But there are our youth, there are our children, and there are their children who have yet to be born, who are entitled to the same liberty, the same republic, the same freedom that we grew up living, experiencing, and expecting to continue. And there is absolutely no excuse why we should not preserve that for them. Our third topic this morning is going to be immigration. The GOP and John Boehner have made the statement, and this is their words, not mine, that they are hell-bent on accomplishing immigration before this election. Well, let me clarify for you exactly what that means. If John Boehner and the Republicans are intent on accomplishing immigration, I want you to look at that for what it is. It is treason. Because there is only one portion, one aspect of immigration that must be accomplished initially, and that is the border be locked down tighter than a gnat's butt. Nothing else can be accomplished. Nothing else can or should be done. See, the truth is that immigration is, at this stage in the game, is the only action that can be taken with relation to this is that the borders be sealed and that every illegal register. After that, We can have a discussion about how to deal with them. But first and foremost, they must be locked down. The borders must be locked, and everyone who is, and by the way, I posted this on Facebook this morning. There's a whole article on there. It's been removed. So I've got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you don't realize exactly how much censorship and propaganda is being injected into the American psyche. We are being betrayed in every respect, in every manner, in every way, shape, and form. Not only by our government, but by the media that they employ, that they own, and lock, stock, and barrel engage in your betrayal, your demise. It's actually criminal. The post that I put up was, Boehner and the GOP leaders pledge business executives that they will move on immigration this year and are, quote, hell-bent on getting it done. Any act of amnesty or any move to legalize without a total border lockdown is an act of treason by both parties. Let them hear from you loudly and clearly. Let it be known that the only portion of immigration that is acceptable at this time is a complete and total lockdown of the border. It must be shut tight. Then a registration window of 1 year. Then we see the results of those actions, and then, and only then, do we begin to move beyond that. We move beyond that based upon the success or the failure of the Border Patrol to do as they've been instructed by law. And if we see this president continuing in his tirade of unconstitutional action, then there's no more sense in passing additional law, folks. There's no point in giving amnesty to a bunch of people that the president will do so with a stroke of his pen as a third world banana dictator. We have to demand accountability, not only from our own people in Washington, but if you're here illegally, we demand accountability from you. You're not entitled to anything until you've shown us that you are accountable to us. Our fourth topic, the cancer of our national government. Ladies and gentlemen, it must be excised. And it must be excised in a way in which it cannot return. You see, we're beyond the point where we can do this with topical applications of elections. We're now at a point in time in which our government is beyond salvage in the realistic world of a political solution. All right, we're going to jump onto our first topic this morning because I want to make sure that we get to this. You know, I got to tell you, the federal, first of all, a couple of things you need to know. There is a federal judge who has made it very clear in the Haggy, and I've talked to you before about the Haggy Ranch issue, which did not get the same level of national attention and media attention that the Bundy Ranch issue has. But I've got to tell you, when you've got a sitting senator who comes out and says, and I'm going to give you his exact words because I want you to understand and I want you to be incensed at treason. Because what he's doing is, first of all, supposed to be an elected representative of the people, not only those people who think his way. They are nothing more than domestic terrorists. I repeat, what happened there was domestic terrorism. Clive Bundy does not recognize the United States. The United States, he says, is a foreign government. He doesn't pay his taxes. He doesn't pay his fees. And he doesn't follow the law. He continues to thumb his nose at authority. They had sniper rifles in the freeway. They had weapons, automatic weapons. They had children lined up. They wanted to make sure they got hurt first. What if others tried the same thing? Well, with all due respect, I've got to tell you, first of all, if you don't understand the Goebbels-like propaganda in those statements, then perhaps you need to put your critical thinking skills back to work. A federal judge in the case of United States versus Haggy has made it very, very clear that for over the past 20 years, the Bureau of Land Management has, quote, engaged in a literal, intentional conspiracy against Nevada ranchers, trying to force them out of business. Understand how the implications of this, and whose word are you going to take for this? Harry Reid, a clear enemy of the state, a clear enemy of America, freedom, liberty, the people, the Constitution, or a judge? In this opinion, U.S. District Court Robert Jones has made a couple of statements that you should hear. Based upon Wayne Haggy's declaration that he refused to waive his rights, which is what this is all about, by the way. Don't believe any of the propaganda that you hear from the mainstream media. They're trying to force him at the point of a gun to waive that which he owns. Based upon Wayne Haggy's declaration that he refused to waive his rights, a declaration that did not purport to change the substance of the grazing permit renewal for which he was applying, and which had no plausible legal effect other than to superfluously assert non-waiver of rights, the government denied him a renewal grazing permit based upon its frankly nonsensical position that such an assertion of rights meant that the application had not been properly completed. The entire chain of events is the result of the government's arbitrary denial of Wayne Haggy's renewal permit, and the effects of his due process violations continue. You see, the problem here in fact, let me just read you this paragraph so that you fully grasp the intent of this, Judge. By filing for a public water reserve, the government in this case sought specifically to transfer to others water rights belonging to the Hages. The government also explicitly solicited and granted temporary grazing rights to parties who had no preferences under the Taylor Grazing Act of 1934. For this reason, the court has held certain government officials in contempt and has referred the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office. This was in his decision, folks, a 104-page decision. In summary, government officials, and perhaps also Mr. Snow, one of the people in the case, entered into a literal, intentional conspiracy to deprive the Hages not only of their permits, but also of their vested water rights. This behavior shocks the conscience of the court and provides a sufficient basis for a finding of irreparable harm to support the injunction described at the end of this order. Now, I got to tell you something, folks. Haggy has won a $4 million and a $14 million lawsuit against the BLM. They've never paid him. Never. That is domestic terrorism. When your government loses, and they're a sore loser, and refuse to pay, and they are guilty of criminal enterprise. This is a RICO statute qualification. William Jasper, the senior editor for The New American, has asked the following question. Has Attorney General Eric Holder prosecuted any federal official for criminal activity in the violation of the Haggy family's constitutionally protected rights? No. Has Senator Harry Reid denounced this lawlessness and the criminal activity by government officials? Has he called upon President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder to protect the citizens of his state from the depredations of federal officials under their command? No. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to tell you, if supporting basic foundational rights that belong to every American, which is the right to just be peaceably left the heck alone, if the right to be free of fear and terror engendered by our own government If that makes you a domestic terrorist, then all of you should stand up and proudly say, guilty. Every one of us. The BLM is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, of actions which are treason. Because they are, you see, it's treason when they're actually violating the Constitution and seeking damage to, in this case, an individual or an entire state. This is treason against the state of Nevada by federal officials. Acting against and aiding and abetting enemies of the country who are seeking to domestically destroy this nation from the inside is an act of treason. You can hear all the lamentations you want from Fox and Communist News Network and MSLSD and Reuters and all the other supporters of tyranny. But I got to tell you, folks, we know the difference. And we're not fooled for a moment. We're wearing the veil of liberty and honor. And it wards and protects us from propaganda and lies. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, I'm going to go over with you. We're going to hit our second topic, which is dishonorably discharged. How all of Washington, D.C. must be removed, or we will likely die trying. We're going to start with this Nevada ranch standoff, and Reuters asking the question, since the Nevada ranch standoff, emboldened militias ask, where next? It's interesting. We're going to look at this article with a critical thinking hat and our gears engaged so that we fully understand the implications of what they have to say to us and what they are not saying. I want you to see the bias. I want you to see and feel the slant. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will tackle this topic. I got to tell you, before we go, if you have an opportunity to, I encourage you to participate with us on Patriot FB. That's a radio program where not only is America's Voice Now broadcast, but also in addition to that, J.J. McCartney and his program at 2 to 4 p.m., and Resurrect the Republic with Tom Lacavara at 10 a.m. in the morning. And in between that is music. You can also join the constitutionclub.ning.com, and you can sign up there on one of the 3,200 little microsites that are available for every county in the United States. Find Patriots near you and make sure that you're interacting with them. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/americasvoicenow, youtube.com/americasvoicenow. Please find our Spreaker link, which is our podcasting link, and if you wouldn't mind, hit the follow button. It certainly helps to get followers on that so that we can get onto iHeartRadio. That's the goal with that program. All right, we'll be back in just a moment.